Throughout Assassin's Creed, we get plenty of chances to see just how capable and strong the different protagonists are. In each game, we have a unique combat system tailored to the characters that helps to shape the world and define the tone for the duration of the game. However, on top of combat, there is also personality that helps to shape how we can determine if an assassin is brutal or not. I was trying to decide out of 3 names which assassin is the most brutal, and I thought about either Altair, Connor, or Bayek. Ultimately though, I picked Bayek. I felt like Connor came in a close second. When I think about brutality, I'm thinking about how the assassin attacks, thinks, and acts. Connor is largely a pretty nice person, and so is Bayek, but Bayek can be driven to extreme anger and has a lot of emotional expression of this anger, even compared to Connor. But enough about that. Let's just get right on into why Bayek is such a brutal assassin. When we are first introduced to Bayek, we find out he is a Medjay. We can pick on some clues regarding what this means throughout the duration of Assassin's Creed Origins, but I decided to do a bit more historical digging on who the Medjay actually were, and it might help give more reasoning as to why Bayek is so brutal. Firstly, the Medjay were an elite paramilitary police force in the 18th dynasty during the New Kingdom in ancient Egypt. Originally, the Medjay referred to an ethnic group from the Medjay region. Many of the Medjay people were often soldiers and helped formulate military forces. Eventually, Medjay stopped referring to an ethnic group and became a military force instead. So we know that Bayek then is basically a member of the Egyptian equivalent of the military police. Soldiers are often trained to be pretty brutal and very effective, which makes his fighting style more intensive. He's obviously not about killing innocent people, but he doesn't shy away from dealing brutal deaths to his enemies. In terms of combat, Bayek is very hard-hitting. He will stab a spear through his enemies, slice at them with a khopesh, and completely annihilate them with clubs and other blunt objects. He doesn't really hold back when it comes to his finishers, and he's pretty violent at that. It's not uncommon at all to see Bayek covered in buckets of blood after he's done with a fight against some of his enemies. He can also use fire-tipped arrows, which means that you're basically setting your enemies on fire until they die, which is brutal when you hear their screams for mercy. Additionally, Bayek can poison dead bodies and then kill other enemies through them when he does that. He pretty much doesn't hold back from making his opponents' lives miserable and short-lived. That's one of the things I noticed about Bayek. He's not very reserved when it comes to his combat style. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty if he has to. He deals effectively in high-stress situations, and he understands that he has to get the job done and do it fast. Bayek also has a very stressful life. I did an intensive breakdown of his character in another video which you can watch on my channel, but Bayek really has it rough. His only son was brutally murdered in front of his eyes. His wife is busy and away from him constantly, and he doesn't really have any way to deal with the intense trauma he's faced. A lot of people around him also either betrayed him or disappointed him. For Bayek, the only way to get things done is to get revenge, which this is something that I find to be interesting. Oftentimes, you see in movies and shows characters suddenly taking the moral high ground before getting revenge and determine it's not worth it. However, Bayek is brutal in the sense that he doesn't just want revenge, but he will dedicate his life to getting this revenge. In his eyes, justice and revenge are essentially equivalent. This is pretty evident in the fact that he hunts the cultists down and slaughters them without thinking twice. To Bayek, if he doesn't get revenge, he's failed at his mission, and that makes him quite brutal. Sure, all of the other assassins pretty much wanted revenge, but Bayek didn't just want any type of revenge, he was going for the whole pack. To compare Bayek a bit more to Connor and Altair, Connor specifically wanted revenge against Charles Lee the most. Altair was just doing his job, and the only job Altair ever knew was being an assassin. Altair is swift and quick, clean and quiet. Bayek is aggressive and he can be stealthy, but he is a soldier at the end of the day, and as a soldier, he doesn't always think about being quiet. He's thinking about getting his enemies, destroying them, and finishing the mission. And he has plenty of enemies, and he knows why he's seeking them to destroy them. Altair largely remained unknowing of his enemies and their true nature until close to the end when Al-Mualim reveals that they are Templars. For the most part, he was just gonna kill them without having a true personal stake in their deaths other than regaining his status. That's not very personal, because none of those Templars actually did anything to Altair. Now for Connor, sure, Connor hated Charles Lee, but technically his father Haytham was the real arm behind everything. And well, Connor didn't exactly want to kill Haytham over Lee, which means Connor was fixated on Charles Lee. Bayek, well, he had an extremely personal stake in the deaths of the cultists. He wanted to kill all of them, and he saw the horrors they were capable of committing. The death of his son in front of his eyes put him in a position where his anger and hatred dictated his actions. Altair was a calculated assassin. Connor was a young man placed in a tough spot, but Bayek was a soldier who watched his son die and wanted nothing more than intense revenge. That's really what defines Bayek's brutality. That is the point of differentiation for Bayek against the rest of the assassins. Sure, we could say another assassin like Eivor is more brutal in the sense that Eivor is a Viking, but I think Eivor's stake in the whole thing is pretty much just land and conquest, and it's not really that personal compared to Bayek. For me, brutality is also within the psychological motivations behind why the assassins do what they do. Sure, combat is a piece of that, but if the combat is not motivated by such intense emotions, it lessens in my eyes the brutality. Bayek would not be able to accept the things he has to deal with if he wasn't so intensely fixated and dedicated to getting revenge. Other assassins had similar situations, but they weren't going as far as Bayek was. I think in a way, all of the assassins presented in this series are brutal, and they are willing to go to intense lengths to get what they want. But I think Bayek ultimately exhibits these feelings more intensely than the others. This is why I believe Bayek is the most brutal assassin. But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, so let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, feel free to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe with notifications set to all so you never miss out on a single upload. It's just an easy way to support the channel. Don't forget to check out my military sci-fi books, the link is in the description below. Also check out my newspaper for gaming news, entertainment, and more. The link to that is also in the description. Thanks again, and Symbiosis out.